Photography is more of a psychological paradox that we discover over the years. So, you're stuck in a rut. Hi, I'm Paul Sebesta, and I'm about to tell you 10 beginning hacks that I wish I would have known when I first started photography. Number 1, composition is key. What do you mean by this, Paul? Composition is key. Very simply, there are no rules to composition. What? That's right, there are no rules to composition. You're going to read books and books and books about this topic. Composition is something that is very, very finite, something that makes a photographer. Photography consists of two things. You have light and you have composition. Light is simply out of our control, but composition we can control all on our own. Composition is completely up to the photographer, not Mama Nature. In fact, composition is what separates really good photographers to people who just do photography. So, okay, Paul, so what about the rule of thirds? What about splitting your frame into grids or diagonal? Does that work? Yes, it works, but it doesn't work all the time. Most importantly, when you think that composition is key, when you don't use compositional rules, you're no longer confined to a way of thinking. If you think, oh, I have to shoot in the rule of thirds, your brain automatically starts to think in shooting rule of thirds. Then you start to kind of get confined in that little compositional box. I've gotten many people who tell me never ever center your image in the middle of the frame. It never works. You must use leading lines. You must use S-curves. Very simply, do what feels right. That is what's the meaning of photography. Do what feels right to you. Do what feels right for the shot itself. You're the one taking the picture, not the compositional rule book. Number 2, simple speaks more. What do you mean by this? The simpler the composition, the better. The human eye has an uncanny ability to see something that is very, very simple. It has the simple ability to pinpoint the most finite details in any image. A simpler photo will almost always speak more. A simpler photo will almost always grab your attention. Look how simple this photo is. It consists of a simple leading line, one subject, and an exotic sunset. Simple stuff, pretty classic. But take a look at this one. Where's my eye going? You're gonna hear people out there who tell you never ever center your image in the very middle of your frame. It never ever works. I'm sorry, but every single photo that I have seen that is successful and every photo that has been compelling for me has always went against the compositional rule book. Shooting a simpler photo actually is a skill. It's something that not everybody can do effectively. If you can have a simple photo, it will speak wonders to your audience. In fact, it will speak so much in such a tiny, small way that you can actually speak more words in such a little amount of time. Number 3, research is gold. Okay, so you've been on social media. You see this exotic photo. You see this photo. Ooh, I've never seen that before. There's a reason for that, because that particular photographer has done his or her homework immensely to find that exact location, that exact subject. This is also a skill, to be able to read a map, to be able to read a map, to be able to imagine the possibility of a scene. In fact, this is something that will greatly improve your skill dramatically just by finding your own locations. This also allows you to think outside the box. When you're first starting out, you can go to exotic places that you've probably seen before. Mesa Arch, Delicate Arch, Mount Rainier over a pond. You've probably seen Sparks Lake. All these classic masterpiece locations. But over time, you can start discovering your own thing. I can guarantee you that a photo that you've never seen before will almost always grab your attention than one that you've seen probably 1,000 times. So, Paul, how do you do this magical ingredient called research? We have an amazing resource at our disposal called the internet, called Google Earth. Can you imagine that our late greats Galen Roll and Ansel Adams, They would have loved to have the resources that we have today as photographers. We can go on the internet and we can Google something that we've never seen before. We can look at images and say, ooh, I like that, but what if I take it a step further and do it this way? Or go to Google Earth and you're scouting the radar and you see that one viewpoint. I wonder if anyone's ever been there before. You've done your research, you've taken the extra effort to make yourself stand out, to give yourself justice, and to be a better person than you were yesterday. Don't forget about the fundamentals. The fundamentals, what are they? They're the big three. I call them the foundation of photography: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Knowing these three things will be the beginning and the end in your photographic world. Here's the thing, you probably started learning these when you first started photography. You learned about ISO, you learned about aperture and shutter speed. But I bet you didn't know just how important these three things are as a photographer. I'm not going to go into too big of a thing about the big three, but just to break it down to you real quick, ISO is basically the foundation of any image. It stands for International Standard Organization, and cameras can go up to ISO, can go down as little as ISO 30 to 25, all the way up to 100,000 nowadays. Simply, the bigger the ISO, the more you're allowed to have a little bit more leeway in your images. Aperture is how much light enters the lens. If, for example, more light will enter an aperture this big, then one will enter this big. And shutter speed is simply how long light enters the lens. ISO, aperture, and shutter speed all work in sync with each other. So understanding the relationship between ISO, aperture, and shutter speed is the foundation to your photography. Slow down, breathe, and really learn about the big three. This one kind of goes hand in hand with the last one. Know your histogram. What is a histogram? Very simply, a histogram is a visual representation of your exposure, of how your image is exposed. Take a look at this histogram here. You have the far left, the far right of a histogram. The far left represents shadows. The far right represents highlights. If you take a look at this histogram, notice all the information is smudged to the right. That means that you've overexposed your image. Take a look at this one. All the image is shoved to the left. That means you've underexposed your image. But take a look at this one here. Notice how the information is beautifully nice rendered right in the middle. That's a perfectly exposed image, my friends, and this is why you need to know your histogram. Knowing that you've shoved all your data to the left, right in the middle, means that you've got to increase your shutter speed or your aperture to allow more light in so you're not underexposed. There's a whole science behind a histogram. That was a tree falling, ladies and gentlemen. There's a whole science on learning how to read your histogram and shadows and highlights and midtones and how all of it works together. But knowing that you can read your histogram right knows that you can make those changes in the field at the right time. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Really? Know your goal. Believe it or not, this is probably the most important hack on this entire video. You want to know a very simple but very difficult question? What do you want? What do you want? This should be your first question every time you're in the field. Hands down, what do you want? Think about this. If you go out in the field and you are on a lake, for example, and you want to shoot that lake, what do I want to do with this image? What am I trying to say? What am I trying to show to my audience? What am I trying to tell them? What am I trying to show them? For example, let's say I get hired by a magazine, right? And they are contracting me out to shoot a mountain scene for their outdoor magazine. Obviously, I know that this image is going to be printed. That means my details need to be razor sharp every time. That's going to help me strive to make as sharpest image as possible. Next, it's probably going to be overexposed a little bit because it's going through a printer. What does this mean? This means that I have to underexpose very slightly so I can grab all that beautiful tonal structure in the image. Because I know I'm shooting for a magazine and it's a mountain scene, I know exactly what I'm doing in the field. What do you want with your image? Is it going to social media? Is it going to be printed? Maybe you're just posting it just for your heart's content. Maybe you're just shooting it because you want. Whatever the goal is, know why you're doing it. Why are you shooting this image? You would be very surprised just asking yourself that question, how much your photography will dramatically increase over time. Think in tones. What do you mean by this? You want to know what your camera sees? Why am I thinking in tones? Why am I thinking in black and white? It's very simple. This is what your camera sees on a daily basis. We see things in color. We see these beautiful full shades of green, shades of brown, but your camera sees nothing but black and white. If you think in monochrome, if you think in black or white, you think in just tones, just black tones, white tones, and gray tones, you start to kind of picture what a camera sees and how it's going to look at the picture. For example, if you see a very contrasty image with a lot of black tones, a lot of white tones, you can start to kind of visualize the scene a little bit better and how you can maybe adjust more of a darker tone or more of a brighter tone. This really helped me in the beginning because 20 years ago, I used to shoot in monochrome, and being able to do that was very beneficial. Nowadays, I know black and white's kind of outdated, but your camera still sees in black and white. It's amazing. So if you're able to visually think about your scene in black and white or monochrome, you can really actually start to see things in a different way. Think in tones. Number 8, manual mode. I get a lot of people asking me this question. Paul, when should I start shooting in manual mode? As soon as possible. It's very simple. Why manual mode? Why not aperture priority or shutter priority? You saw those beautiful images you see online or on a social media feed or in someone's portfolio. That's because they were shooting in manual mode. They're able to control the light at a minute level. They're able to control how much light enters the camera and how long it enters the camera. Waterfalls, for example, when you shoot that long, silky flow of water, that's done with manual mode. That's done by telling your camera how much you want that shutter to remain open. I say manual mode because manual mode is 100% user error. Shutter priority, aperture priority, the camera controls the aperture and the shutter speed. But manual mode, it is all you. If you make a mistake, it's your fault. If you render a photo beautifully, that's your kudos. It is 100% user dependent. So manual mode not only allows more creativity, but it also expands your horizons. It expands your knowledge in the most beautiful possible way as a photographer. Number 9, focus on knowledge rather than gear. Okay, this is a very debatable topic among photographers. Let's get this straight. Okay, photographers are gear nuts. They love talking about the latest lens, the latest gear. Search YouTube, you won't have any problem looking for tons of videos on photography gear. Here's the deal though. Photography is much more organic and dimensional than gear. I like to think of it this way. A camera is to a photographer as a scalpel is to a surgeon. A hammer is to a carpenter. A microscope is to a microbiologist. A camera is simply a tool to get the job done. A tripod is simply a tool to get the job done. Same thing with an L bracket or a lens. Yes, these are important things to make your craft, but they're nothing but tools to get the job done. They will never ever replace what's in here. This, my friends, is the best machine you have at your disposal. Here's the truth. You want to know the most asked question I get from people all the time? What camera do you shoot with? And I say anything I have on me. Here's the thing, right? How would you know if a photo was taken with a smartphone or high-range DSLR? You would never know the difference anymore. That technology's advanced so much. In fact, here's a secret that I told a couple of my really good colleagues. They had no idea about this about me. I just started shooting with the most newest DSLR at the time was a Sony a7R III. I just started shooting with this a year ago. Before, the camera I used was a Pentax Case 7. Now Google that right now, take a few minutes, and you will see that a Pentax Case 7 is how old? It is a 12-year-old camera. I've been shooting photography with an outdated DSLR from the early 90s, guys. It doesn't matter what camera you use. It does not matter what gear you use. Yes, quality is important. You do get what you pay for in photography gear, but instead of gear, focus your efforts on expanding this. Focus your efforts on expanding your knowledge. Book a photography workshop from a photographer inspired by that, where you can learn their techniques and how you can implement their techniques into your photography. Purchase post-processing videos from a photographer you admire. That way you can expand your post-processing knowledge. These are valuable tools that will never be outdated, that will never, ever go away. Yes, my a7R III is already outdated, but the knowledge I have in here will never go away. And probably the most important hack I have in this entire video: stay true to yourself. I can't tell you how important this is in today's ever-changing world. Photography is changing fast. It changes by the instant. It's very easy to forget about where you come from. It's very easy to forget why you started photography in the first place. It's very easy to forget about the purpose, the fuel behind your photography if you're shooting for the masses, so to speak. And I think now more than ever, it's very important to stay true to who you are. Staying true to you, staying the course, is what separates you. It's what makes you beautiful. It's what makes me wanting to see your work. I want to see you. I want to see your passion. I want to see your story. I want to see what you have to bring. And that is what makes photography. Not influencing, not marketing, you. But in the end, what matters is you. I know some very accomplished colleagues of mine who they've never changed who they were in years. They shoot things the way they want because they do it. That is who they are. And you know what? It shows. They are amazing photographers. They blow my mind every time I see their work. And that's because they stay true to who they are. They know what they're doing. They know how to shoot a photo, and they are not afraid to show the world, dude, I'm different, okay? This is me, like it or not. The most beautiful thing you can bring to the artistic table is your own creativity, your own passion behind imagery. And that is photography. That is art. That is what makes you, you. So that's it, guys. I hope you liked this video. I hope you liked the hacks. I hope you like everything I brought to the table. If you thought this was helpful, give me that thumbs up. And if you have any projects you're working on, let me know. I would love to see them. I'd love to see what you guys are working on and what inspires you in this ever-changing, phenomenal photographic world. All right, we will see you guys. We'll see you cool cats later. Bye-bye.